Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys in a Stack of Comics. Mike finally got free of his busy schedule for a bit, so we're able to record our weekly What is in the Stack. And you're a reverse flash, or is that Wally West that you got there, sir?
It's the reverse
You got
flash.
reverse flash. I guess time away has changed you on your flash preferences.
I'm now Eobard Thawne. Look out, everybody.
However, wanted to talk about best new comics of the week as we do every week. And there was one release this week which Mike and I are extremely torn on. I think we both enjoyed it. We enjoyed the effort. We think the artwork was good. But we wanted to debate a little bit and talk a bit and get your guys' thoughts on what do you think of the undertaking of this first one. So we'll spend the primary amount of time on that. And then I got four other books we'll just do some thoughts on. But the one we're talking about, the new history of the DC universe. This is one of the alternate covers. It's the only one I was able to grab. Mark Waid on this. I believe the art is Todd Knock on it as well. But essentially in this, you have Barry Allen, who is retired now in the DC universe, and they do confirm in the first pages that he's retired. He was depowered a few months back in that Absolute Power event. And so Barry is writing up a chronological history of the DC universe. That's kind of the framework of what happens. And so this goes basically from the creation of the DC universe with beings like the Monitor, the Anti-Monitor, the creation of the Guardians, the creation of the Wizards who give Shazam his powers, all the way up through the birth of Vandal Savage, Neanderthals, the world starting, Carter Hall and Shiara being, ancient Egyptians. You go through, he weaves in all the Old West type heroes of the DC universe like Jonah Hex, World War II heroes like the Blackhawks. He actually puts in characters like the Sandman from Sandman, the Vertigo comic, and kind of puts him in there and his place in time. So Dream, how does he take place? The formation of the JSA. They also even take Mark Waid did this thing about lost characters to time. It was part of that Jay Garrick miniseries that you read, Mike, where there was the lost daughter. They weave those characters into history. They revisit the JSA, World War II, the losers, all that kind of stuff. There is a cut, and then it ends with getting to the new kind of era here, where Martian Manhunter debuts. No Superman in this book, no Batman, none of the foundational Justice League characters outside of Barry as the framework person and Martian Manhunter's first appearance at the end. Two huge changes to this, and Mike and I wanted to talk about one. What do we think about this undertaking that Mark Waid and them are doing with writing this? I believe it's supposed to be 3 or 4 issues. So do we think it's a good undertaking? And then two big changes for DC. Superman, very clearly no longer the first super being in the DC universe. Then you have the JSA, and again, chronologically, we've always kind of had that Vandal Savage and different characters are older than Superman. But according to this is like the new canon of DC. Superman no longer, despite being Action Comics 1, no longer the first superhero of DC. Also, they retcon out that Diana was not the Wonder Woman in World War II with the JSA. It was actually her mom. So a couple big changes. There's some other ones in there as well. But Mike, I'll kick it to you to start on this, sir. This idea of rewriting, like Barry Allen kind of writing the history of the DC universe. Do you think this is a smart idea by DC? What do you think about the changes? Like, what are your overall thoughts on the undertaking of it?
Number one, I do think Mark Waid is watching our channel. So hello to Mark Waid. And because this is the kind of thing that we've been talking about for more than a year, is that eventually you're going to have to, because continuity is so messy, eventually you're going to have to reset everything. So
Yeah.
this is a great reset, and they got one of their master writers, Mark Waid, to do it. So it's a very tall order. Nobody could have done it better, I think, than Mark Waid. And so it's weird because everyone knows the first superhero was Superman in actual continuity.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to build a new continuity and introduce a 20-something Superman and Batman into that continuity, you could not have had them 80 years ago. And so I think, this is the kind of thing that we've been asking for, and DC Comics is delivering an Elseworld universe that has its own fresh look and continuity and can hold a story and an art group, a creative group for more than 4 issues. They
Hmm.
did that. Um, totally break down continuity and start from scratch. They're trying that. Um, get the movie slash, the movie comics closer to the release date of the movies. They're doing
They're
that.
getting a
These
little
are
closer,
all
yeah.
these are all things that we're working on, and so between now and when does Superman debut? July.
Superman's July 11th, so we're about 2.5 weeks away.
So if you can, have the movie release and then next month, put Superman into this continuity, then it could be good. I don't know. What do you think, Reed?
Overall, though, I think, like you said, we can't complain that they don't do this stuff and then they do it and be mad about it. What I will say is, in the back, there's about 10 to 12 pages of where they show the research that they did and the comics that they researched and the events and how they pieced it together. And so, look, one of the things is you're never going to make everybody happy because the continuity doesn't make any sense as it is. One of the things with DC, there's just so many events that don't make sense anymore in terms of did the new 52 actually happen? Was that a pocket universe? Was Crisis? What was Infinite Crisis? What's pre Crisis, post Crisis? What was Rebirth? Dr. Manhattan with the whole, was it Doomsday Clock thing where he was messing with the DC universe? You've had so many things that are incongruous with each other that you had to do something. What I agree with you on this. Mark Waid, whatever people think about some of his personal things, he's a great comic book writer. He's one of the best comic book writers we have.
And he knows his comic
And
history
he
backwards
knows
and
his comic
forwards.
history. And most importantly, Mark Waid loves the superheroes that he writes. And the thing is, unlike in Alan Moore or some of the guys that we have now, where there isn't a huge love for the characters. Mark Waid loves superheroes acting like superheroes. And so I think if you were going to trust it to someone, he's as good an option as you're going to get in the modern age. Do I like Superman no longer being the first superhero of DC Comics? No, but that's kind of been how it is for a while. And that you can't, if Superman was around in World War II, then Lois Lane has to be dead. And so does Jimmy Olsen, and so does Perry White. And by that same thing, then Bruce Wayne would probably have to be dead, and Alfred would have to be dead, and Dick Grayson, and all of them as well. And so they have this weird task of, because these characters have had more staying power than anyone probably ever imagined when they created these little paper comics in the late 30s, you have to do some changes and some switches. And I think overall, this is a decent attempt. I think the other part is DC's had some weird acquisitions as far as like the Charlton characters. And then they had like the Milestone universe. They had what was it, Wildstorm universe. All these different ones that like Jim Lee created in different, and they've integrated that into their world. And so this seems to be how do we put all of that together? Not unlike kind of like what Crisis did, where it was like, hey, this is all too messy. Let's try to fix it. And so I do think if this becomes kind of a manual of, hey, here's the history of DC, here's what's canon, here's what isn't, I can't complain about that. And I actually admire the heck
And
out of them for trying,
I gotta love it that they're taking Barry Allen to be the
making him
narrator
the
for
author.
this. I mean, you gotta love it, right? If you're a Flash fan, it's a perfect setup. And you're right about Mark Waid. He's one of the true masters who has completely digested the entire DC universe. And this is probably, one of the pivotal moments of his writing career for DC. Can can we save DC continuity?
Yeah.
Who do we got on staff? We got Mark Waid, and and he steps up behind center. He's the quarterback, and he throws a Hail Mary, which was desperately needed, and it looks like it's going to land. I mean, some things are going to be a little bit
It's well
funky,
drawn.
but
It's and that's the other thing too is it's this was 5.99 I believe. Um, it's about 60, 70 pages. I think it's 65 pages, so it's good. It's a good read. It's interesting to see them put together. It's well drawn. It's consistent. It's one artist throughout. And again, part that I love, and this is where I will give credit, and me and you talk about this with Conan, so I want to credit it here. When you have pages like this where you show, here's our research. This is what we're pulling it from. Then you know it's not just people pulling it out of the thin air and kind of going, hey, my fan imagination is that this happened first and then this happened. I respect the heck out of it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good read. Is there going to be stuff people complain about? 100%. Is there going to be things where, well, wait, no, Diana was at the JSA, and I get it. I get that, and I'm not saying anyone's complaints are invalid. If you're really attached to the idea that Superman should be the first hero of DC because he was, I get you. I'm not saying you're wrong. Same thing if you're like, look, Diana was with the JSA. If those are important to you, this is probably going to tick you off. What I will say, it's an impossible task. Mark Waid is trying to put a Rubik's Cube together that people have messed up for generations and that fights back. And like this is like not a Rubik's Cube where you can do a formula. This is someone peeled the stickers off and put them
Yeah.
on different areas so that there's no logical way to do it. And so I admire the heck out of him trying. I thought it was entertaining. It was a good read. And again, like you pointed out, we have said this for a while. DC and Marvel need to answer what is canon and what isn't canon. And if this project, which I think is 3 or 4 issues, allows them to do that and give people a hey, do you want to know the history of DC? Here it is. Then that can't be a bad thing, in my opinion, unless they do stupid stuff later. But I don't think Mark Waid's going to. And so I think with all the missing pieces and different things they have to integrate, I actually love the idea of it.
I really think it's a great foundation to build the DC universe again and bring it to new readers. And you've got to understand the timing. I mean, we are on the precipice of having this major Superman movie come out. And when you have a brand new bunch of new fans come in and they want to know the history of the universe that they're going to be reading, from, July 2025 on,
Yeah.
they can go to this 3-issue miniseries and be okay. And DC can build from that and not worry about the crazy, messy continuity of the last 30 years.
Well, the only thing that I think will be important with this is I hope DC's on board saying, hey guys, no, this is canon now. We don't
Oh,
decanonize
yeah,
this
they got
stuff.
to stick with it.
We don't go in and go, hey, well, actually, this if they truly stick with this, if they set this up and going forward, they have it, and you have kind of like a manual sort of thing that you can hand to new readers, old readers, and go, hey, here's 200 whatever odd pages of Mark Waid sitting down telling you what the history of DC is. It's approved by DC, and we are going to stick to this. That's admirable, and it should have happened a long time ago. And again, the big part that gives me buy-in with it. I know people have strong opinions on Mark Waid because he's not the nicest guy at all times online with folks. And with an engagement standpoint, you and I have always said we don't care about that stuff. And I
I don't
truly
know
don't.
anything about that stuff.
And I truly don't care about that element of it because all I know is Mark Waid, when he writes Superman, when he writes Batman, when he writes the Justice League, it's well written. The characters act in character, and the universes that he builds are built out of a love of superheroes. And
And
that's
don't
been him
forget
both Marvel and DC.
the 10 plus years he wrote The Flash, Wally West.
Yep. No, and
I
that's
mean,
I think that's the key element of this is the only other guy that I could think of that could have been a good choice was Jeff Johns, but we know he's kind of out on the outs with DC. And so you got a good creative team. There's a lot of attention to detail in it. I don't know if this book will be a big hit. It might slip by through a lot of people, but I would say if you're a DC fan who's just like, man, I think this is a really interesting read.
you
Again,
got to get it.
completely agree with some folks I've seen online saying like, hey, what the heck? This is wrong. Again, the biggest thing where I'm not going to give this any junk. Thus far, there's no elements where I'm like, what the heck? Like, if they do something stupid, like, well, actually, this person was Batman before Bruce Wayne. That's stupid. But I don't think Mark Waid will do that. And so with this, while not everything jives with how everyone's going to like, what I do like is it does make sense. It is decently put together. There's a rationale behind it. And I think DC and Marvel need this. So
And
overall, I would recommend it.
you got to know that Mark Waid racked his brain
No,
to put
especially when they post
to
about 10
even
to
come up
15
with
pages in
that.
the back.
For all the detractors, I would say, you know what? If you put the ball in your court, you wouldn't have even come.
You'd have to do the same thing. And that's the thing is these timelines and the stuff with these universes, You can't make them work. Batman can't have been in World War II selling war bonds like he was in some of the old comics
Yeah.
and be alive in the era of the cell phone and the stuff that he has now. You have to piece that together. And so I think this is a valiant effort by them. I,
I
I enjoyed it. I would recommend it to folks, especially longtime DC fans. And again, if there's something we're missing where you're like, hey, no, man, this was messed up because of this, let us know, right? We could be wrong, but I think both of us enjoyed that and thought it was a decent read and an admirable effort by DC to do something we have long called for them to do. All right, so let us know your thoughts on that one below. Shorter stack this week, only other four books to go through for this week. I will say, as much as he's had a rough go lately, a very good week of Spider-Man comic books, in my opinion, at least. So, Ultimate Spider-Man number 18, finally, Peter Parker reappears. I was really not happy with the last two issues with no Peter. Peter's back in this. They team him up with Harry. We actually see some superhero fighting from Peter in this, stopping multiple villains. Going through this book, I think it's still the best current ongoing from one of the big two. And it was great to see Marco Cicchetto back on the art. We do get a little bit of a kind of thing at the end where his son has been tricked and is caught by the Sinister Six at the end. I
right.
will say my only complaint about this book, and Mike, I guess I can get your thoughts on this. I know it's another universe, so I get it. The fact that they're having Peter Parker's son be in a romantic relationship with Black Cat and it's Felicia Hardy, I don't know. That's the only element of this book. I know the timeline's screwy. I know they messed stuff up. I'll be honest, that's the only thing of this where I'm like, no, man, don't do that. That's the
Well,
only mistake I
at,
think they made.
at least they didn't have Black Cat come on to Peter because he's married. That would be
Yeah,
really weird.
yeah, that would be something they do in the main 616. I mean, they did that for years when he was married to Mary Jane. I could see now in the 616 universe, they'd probably have Peter have an affair or something stupid like that with how much they don't like the character
No, we
anymore.
want to keep this clean. He's got a good marriage,
No,
and,
and I think that's the admirable good part of this is I liked the scenes with Peter and Mary Jane in this. I
me
really hope
too.
they keep Harry as a hero. I didn't like that they did the death fake out, and I partially am still kind of mad that they faked out on that. But if you bring him back, have Harry be the Green Goblin as a hero, and it gives this a different feel. I like seeing the teamwork element. I think it's good. I think this was a really solid issue. I think if you've been a bit bored with Ultimate Spider-Man the last two issues, as I kind of have been, this was a needed step in the right direction to get to going.
It,
Like,
it
okay,
brought
now we're
it
playing
brought
again.
you back. It
Yeah.
brought you back.
So I think that was really solid. Another great one this week for me, at least. I like Spider-Man and Wolverine number 2. Guggenheim and Kari Andrews on this. This is basically just a long fight between Peter Parker and Wolverine.
What's
It was
not to
really well
like?
done. Both characters had their great moments. They showed the strength of Peter, the rage of Wolverine. I love the idea that they've implemented into this that Logan might have had something to do with Peter Parker's parents' death. Part of what I have bemoaned the most in main continuity is I think Origin, that comic book where they gave Wolverine a definitive history, was one of the stupidest things they've ever done. Because I think the coolest appeal of Wolverine was this endlessly mysterious past that you never had answers on, and he could technically be involved in anything, and you
Yeah,
never really knew. And so I
right.
like that they're playing around with that. I think the fight was kind of cool. They do have a major cliffhanger, so a spoiler at the end where it looks like Wolverine might have fatally hurt Spider-Man. Not imagining that will actually happen. But I
Right.
thought it was a good fight, frenetic action. And one of the things is superhero comics, well, there's not a ton of plot in this. It's a great fight scene. I like the Andrews art. I know not everybody does. I'm never going to complain about a comic book that gives me action wall to wall with two of the best characters and a misunderstanding that makes sense and actually kind of fits. I think adding mystery back to Wolverine's past is absolutely needed. So I was a fan of that one there. Last two, Absolute Universe, Absolute Martian Manhunter. I think I finally know where the comic is going, and I will say it continues to be interesting. I mean, the idea of separating the Martian Manhunter and John Jones into two sort of entities, and having John Jones be this man who's married and has kids and is trying to figure out what is happening to his life because the Martian's making him disconnect. I think it's interesting. I will give this a ton of credit, and what I will say is it's a really, really colorful comic book that has a lot of attention to detail in it. I'm not the biggest Dennis Camp fan, the writer, and so there is some elements I don't love, but I think I finally know where this book is going, and I do think It's interesting, and what I will say is there was at least a lot of effort put into this comic. When we have so many comics now that seem to be lazy and just punted out there, this
You
really
know,
seems to have some grand scale to it, and I appreciate that, even if I don't
you know
love
what
every
was
single thing about
cool?
it.
What was cool about Martian Manhunter is the design aspect. They
Mhm.
decided to take it generally in a different direction design wise. It doesn't look like any other comic, DC comic on the rack. Doesn't
Yeah.
look like any other Marvel comic on the rack. There are some indie titles that kind of, have taken shots like that. But the whole, if you're familiar with the artist Peter Max, he was a
Hmm.
famous artist from the 60s, did the Beatles Yellow Submarine album cover. This comic just has complete shades of Peter Max, with all the bold, bright, flat colors. And you got to give him props for trying something different and showing the comic book audience a new look, a new design, and
No,
telling a
that's a
decent
great point
story.
that she raised, in that they went for a distinctive feel that's absolutely needed. And whether you love it or I'm in the camp of liking it. I don't like every detail of it, but what I do appreciate is there's a lot of effort into the comic book. It is not a lazily punted out comic. So I appreciate the heck out of that. When me and you see so many books every month where it's like, what did you guys
Just
spend
phoned
5 minutes on the art? So I think that was really, really admirable. Last one I'll mention, Absolute Wonder Woman #9. Um, I will say this is the one absolute book that's sort of it's just too slow. It's too slow. There is some interesting things, and it's one of these. It reminds me of a video game, and I don't play a ton of video games. Part of the reason I stopped playing some of the video games, and I'm sure people will complain about this, and it probably marks my age. I am used to straightforward video games where you have one plot and you kind of go to point A and point B and you finish. I don't mind if there's
in.
some optional things to do. You get some of these games where it's just like, we're not going to tell you where to go, just play around in the world kind of thing. And it drives me insane. And so this is kind of what I think Absolute Wonder Woman feels a little bit like in it. Some issues feel like it's the main plot again. We're going and things are sequential. And then there's just issues where it's like, how did we end up here? What are we doing? Why is this happening? And so I do
Right.
just wish it's not a poorly written book. The art from Hayden Sherman's not my favorite. It's a weird book in that it kind of just seems tonally very different, and it's like almost like there's a new creative team on half the issues, even though there isn't. It's very weird. I didn't hate it, but I would just say it's another book where I'm just like, pick up the pace a little bit, like just pick up that pace. But overall, small week of comics. Would definitely recommend the new history of the DC universe for folks out there. I think that's a fascinating read. Ultimate Spider-Man was great this week. Same for Spider-Man and Wolverine and Absolute Martian Manhunter. And I guess a cautiously tentative, lukewarm check out Absolute Wonder Woman if you're still reading that.
Right.
But let me know, what do you guys think down below? Let us know, what do you guys think down below? What did you think of the new history of the DC universe? What were your complaints? Whether you agree or disagree, please let us know, folks. As always, thank you for watching. God bless you. We will catch you in our next video.
Thanks, everybody.